Oh,
Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to wait a minute or so for folks to come into our virtual space. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Tuesday, June 6th, and we'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m. Committee members and community members listening in, this is the fourth meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. I'm sitting next to David, one of our co-chairs who is going to facilitate tonight's meeting. Our other co-chair, Lori, is doing something amazing that was pre-planned, so she is not here tonight. Before we get started, I'm going to take this opportunity just to remind committee members and the community members that are here that the transition team is hiring right now. And we're looking for a community engagement position that will support this committee's work and other transition activities. It closes next Monday, June 12th. So any distribution ideas you have, please spread it within your networks. You know, if you're out there listening and you want to apply, please do so. Closes Monday. Next slide, please.
We haven't screen checked this. I think slide. Hold on just a second.
I'm just going to talk about some Zoom logistics. So I think it's okay that they're not up there at the moment. So this is a hybrid meeting. We have folks virtual and folks in person at the Portland building. It is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the city's transition webpage under past meetings and events. For tonight's meeting, we have closed captioning, American Sign Language, and Spanish interpretation available. To access Spanish interpretation, you click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select Spanish. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom right side of your screen. For committee members, please take a moment to change your chat settings to everyone. That way, not only panelists can see, but community members listening in can see the entire chat. As a reminder, what you put in the chat is part of the public record and travels along with the meeting summary from tonight's meeting. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available tonight. So you can submit questions or comments at any time using the Q&A function. We may try to answer questions that we see along the way. We may not get to them either, but again, they, like the chat, will become part of the public record for this meeting. At tonight's meeting, folks in attendance do have the option to give verbal public comment, but as a reminder, people can submit public comment at any time through an online form on our website or by emailing transition@portlandoregon.gov. I do want to take one moment before I turn it over to David to go over the agenda. There are opportunities and challenges of hybrid meetings. I think we all understand that. The last meeting, I wasn't feeling well, so I participated virtually. It was really challenging to have people in the room having side conversations with each other or people speaking without being called on. And I'm sure it might have even been harder for a community member listening in. I know it's hard, but if we can try to limit the side conversations, it all gets picked up, and it was really hard. And really try to wait for David or someone to call on you so we only have one person speaking at once. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David to go over the agenda.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I'm glad to finally be here in person. Like she was saying, it's a little difficult to try to run a meeting in the virtual world, so this is good. All right, so looks like tonight we're gonna spend the first 10 minutes on community business, including approving our last meeting summary. That goes from 6 to 10 p.m. and then from 6 to 6:10 p.m. Let me just, I'm not staying up till 10 people. That's just not happening, okay? And then from 6:10 to 6:25, public comment and public comment reports will be happening at that point. Do we have anybody signed up tonight?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let's see here. Then let's see. We're gonna do some. We're gonna look over our foundational documents again. This is a public portion of the meeting where people will be able to we will consider adoption of the bylaws, values, and working agreements. We will spend an hour reviewing upcoming transition milestones, agreeing to roles of this committee in relationship to those milestones, and that's from 6:55 to 7:55. And before we adjourn our meeting, we will close with a brief review of our next steps and any new actions identified during today's meeting. Next slide, please. Okay. So first of all, my co-chair Lori, Joe, and Manny have excused absences tonight. That's why it looks a little thin in here. And then Leo will be arriving late. Our first order of committee business is to approve the May 11th meeting summary. Did you guys have a chance to look over that? Okay. At this time, I will ask you to refer to the document and raise any comments or questions about it. Any comments, questions? Okay, sounds like it's generally agreed upon through the silence. Okay, I just want to make sure before I move on.
Like a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and there we go. If I had a gavel, I would, it's the whole reason why I got in this chair. They didn't give me the gavel. Just it's not, there you go. Approved. Okay. Second, you guys. Okay, so now I'll just pass this on back to Julia and to introduce our public comment.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of time held tonight for verbal public comment, as we always do. I do also want to share some recent public comment reporting with you, though, since we have some time held. We do ask folks to sign up ahead of time, and they kind of get called on first. We didn't have anyone sign up ahead of time, so I do just want to pause for a minute. We have some community members listening in. We have a community member here listening in. And so just want to wait a minute and see if anyone wants to speak. If you're here virtually, you could just raise your Zoom hand and we can promote you to a panelist. No pressure. Okay. Thank you for letting me give folks a moment. Just as a reminder, again, you can give public comment at any time. Yeah, no worries. So I do, since we have a little bit of time held for public comment, just want to update folks about the public comments we have received so far. So during charter review, we kind of tracked public comment through the November election. And then post-election, we started capturing it as transition public comment. So the first couple public comment reports are now available online. I sent you all the links. And for community members listening in, they are available under the document section on the transition webpage. And there are two so far. There's one that goes from November, like around the elections, until the end of February. And then the next one is March 2023, and subsequently they will be every month. So you'll see in April 2023 and May 2023, et cetera. The reports that are available on the website are the public comments in their entirety, right? So you see everything somebody submitted, a verbatim transcript if they delivered the public comment verbally. I also just wanted to give you a sense about what we've been hearing so far topics wise. So on the left-hand column is that first report. Remember that generally is covering more months than you would normally see. It's almost 4 months. And then the March one is obviously just March, and you'll see April, May coming soon. So in the whole period from basically the election through the end of February, we received 121 public comments. The majority of those public comments were actually about phase 2 of charter review. So not the transition. The Charter Commission kept meeting and working after the ballot measure referral in November. So that's what that chunk is about. The next most common area commented on were geographic districts. And then in March, comparatively, 87 public comments. So more per month, right, than in that preceding period. And the vast majority are about districting. And we haven't seen April yet, but I imagine you're going to see very similar numbers. I also just wanted to kind of call out, sorry, it's probably my fault, it's a little cut off at the bottom, but in that November to February period, the most common source of the public comment was comment to City Council. And again, that's because the Charter Commission was in front of City Council on its phase 2 work. The second primary source in that period was the email, I believe. And then in March, maybe unsurprisingly, the top source was comment to the Independent District Commission. Right, so we will continue to report on this, but I'm also sending you these reports. I encourage you to read them and see what it is folks are talking about. Let me just pause there for a moment. Questions about this? You haven't seen this before. Comments?
Sorry, Julia, where was the link to the comments that you sent us?
It is in the shared folder I created where one says November 22 to February 2023 public comment report, and one says March 2023 public comment report. But also for community members listening in, please remember that the full raw public comments are on the website. And I will, just as a reminder for folks in the room, if you can raise your Zoom hand so David can call on people in the order that you raise your hand.
I don't have a Zoom hand because I can't get on the internet.
Okay. So I think, Fred, you were first before Juanita?
Maybe, as quickly, Julia, the percentages, I assume there must be multiple comments. And so that's why they add it to more than 100%.
Correct.
Why did you do that instead of just the number of comments in regards that would address a specific subject area?
I mean, we can do it again. I mean, I would love feedback if this is not a reporting way that works for you. Certainly people do not comment only about one topic, right? Sometimes they do, but sometimes they might say, and I have something to say about salaries and ranked choice voting and service delivery and geographic districts. And so that would be coded 4 times in each of those categories, even though it's one individual speaking on multiple things.
Percentage seems maybe not as useful. You know, just total number might be more accurate.
Juanita? You're muted. You're muted, Juanita. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Julia, for sending us the link to all of the comments. So giving an opportunity to read all of the comments was a very educational process to see how people are feeling about all of the proposed changes. So that's all.
That would be.
You want to try again, Juanita?
What happened?
Your audio cut off. Our internet connection is a little wonky. So can you?
Oh, you didn't hear me?
No, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you didn't hear me. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that thank Julia for sending the sampling of the comments and then also attaching the link to give us the opportunity to read all of the comments that were submitted. It was a very educational process, giving a sense of what people are being worried about it and their concerns. So that's all. That was my comment. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. So again, you'll keep seeing these. We'll take a look at Fred's recommendation and see maybe what it looks like if you look at numbers versus percentage. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to David to do foundational documents.
So there are several foundational documents for this committee, bylaws, values, working agreements, and a community engagement framework. Tonight, I'm going to ask the committee for motions to adopt the bylaws, values, and working agreements. We've reached out several times to several members and did some work and a little tweaking on certain documents and so on and so forth. So we're bringing them forth for everybody to look at. So at our next meeting, the community engagement work will lead a discussion about the community engagement plan. That includes the community engagement framework. I know that committee is kicked off and they know what they're doing. I'll just put it that way. I've had the privilege of sitting back and just listening to them, and they're doing fantastic work right now. So we previously discussed the bylaws and values at a committee meeting, and Lori and I have asked for committee members to input all 3 documents between meetings to give us input for all those documents. Last week, we sent track changes versions of the bylaws and values to the committee, as well as clean versions of the working agreements. So we'll begin with the bylaws. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so a new version of the values was distributed. What is this? No, this is the values. I'm sorry, I skipped one. I'm sorry, guys. So first thing we're going to do, a new version of the bylaws was distributed to the committee last week. There were revisions based on members' feedback, including shifting the facilitator role to the co-chairs, state preference for in-person attendance by allowing remote attendance. So we're going to encourage people to come in person, but we're going to still have this hybrid model going on. Okay. Of course, we also added a description of alternatives and reserve alternatives for the city council appointment report. We clarify that decision-making requires a motion and a second. And then we add that committee may create work groups in addition to subcommittees. Work groups are time limited, such as our community engagement. That's a work group and not a subcommittee, because that is a limited engaged committee. And of course, we're going to remove the limitation of the meeting chat by being only for social comment. Okay. Are there any questions or discussions on the agreement before I entertain the motion for approval?
Yes, Fred, Niels, I think this is a great improvement from the original, especially regards to the facilitator. It was such a struggle the first 2 meetings, especially when they weren't here and didn't quite know what the scope of our tasks were. So this is much better. I would remind both co-chairs that there are no term limits for co-chairing. And they're both doing an excellent job, and if I may, I see it, Julie has, I will make a motion for adoption of the bylaws if there's no further comment beforehand.
Go ahead, Julie.
I second the motion.
Oh, thank you, Anita. We're going to give Julie just a moment before we formalize this vote.
Sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of all these documents. So under B, it says, it talks about an elected member of the city council. I think maybe that should say the committee. And it says only one time in each meeting of the city council. Shouldn't that, aren't we talking about the committee? It's under disclosure of conflicts of interest. It's the fourth bullet down under B. And it talks about, I thought maybe this was revised from a city council document.
The bylaws?
We're looking at the bylaws.
I'm looking at the
Yeah.
bylaws. I'm on page 4 of 7. And in the middle, disclosure of conflicts of interest. And see where that bullet is indented, for example, et cetera, an elected member of the city council would have to make a public announcement one time when met with the conflict of interest, et cetera. You see what I'm talking about, or do I have the wrong version?
You're right. So we are on page 4 of 8. If folks want a moment to get there, it's B, disclosure of conflict of interest, the third bullet down. And the point of that bullet is to say the announcement has to be made on each occasion when the committee members met with the conflict, even if it's a previously declared conflict of interest, right? So I declare I have a conflict of interest with Diana. All right. And I say it in this meeting. I need to say it again if it comes up. I can't just assume that that is now somehow, I need to put it on the record again. Then the indented bullet is just an example. So as an example, here's how it would work, and the exemplary body is city council.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Is that,
Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't quite follow that.
so we had a formal first by Fred, and Anita, are you still seconding that even after our discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so I will say that the bylaws have been officially adopted by this committee. Next slide, please.
Wait.
There's a
We have to
vote.
vote.
Oh, hold on, I'm going too fast. I'm sorry, guys.
You're
Any opposed? No? Okay. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that. That was like, we're making progress. There's been a lot of work done on this. It's like for real, a lot of meetings, a lot of, phone calls, text messages. It's been a thing.
Oh, no.
Okay, so then on our next slide is where we get into the values revisions. So a new version of the values was distributed to committee members last week. Did everybody get that new version? Yeah, okay. The revisions based on members' feedback, including addressing issues concerning anti-immigration, sentiments to anti-racism, added a description of intersectionality to equality, and we also added acknowledging Portland's history of exclusion to equity. Are there any questions or discussions on the agreement before I entertain a motion for approval?
Moved. Second.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And any of those opposed? Okay. And no abstaining? Got it. Okay, and of course, next slide. Okay, so the working agreement. Okay. Okay, so working agreements establish our expectations of each other, right? How are we going to work together? Based on the bylaws, the working agreements will be acknowledged before each meeting, and multiple violations of the working agreements by a member may result in a member's removal. Okay. The working agreements under consideration tonight were drafted based on one-on-ones with committee members, and the document was sent to members on multiple occasions. The working agreement states as follows. 1, in discussion, challenge ideas rather than individuals. Offer constructive suggestions. 2, approach different opinions with curiosity. Seek to understand. 3, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work. 4, arrive on time and prepared to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting, or let the co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers. Sorry. Keep multitasking to a minimum. And then 6, keep focus on the objectives of the meetings. Utilize facilitators to note additional topics for discussion. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and our expectations of each other include 7, honor the decisions of the group. 8, contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. 9, collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. 10, step up and step back. Okay, all right. And 11, embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools. And 11, use I statements. Okay. Are there any questions or discussion on the agreement before I entertain a motion for approval? Okay. Yes, please, Zach.
Zach Kroll, for those listening in. So I'm curious with the coordination with co-chairs. I'm trying to remember that number 6 on keeping focus on the objectives, utilizing co-chairs to note additional topics for discussion. There were instances in which we've had like conversations with you all as co-chairs to think about how we can best strategize with our schedule and future meetings. And I'm curious if we want to agree to have those conversations documented by email versus like through phone calls or whatnot, just to ensure that there's a public record of that. And I don't know if anybody has opinions or thoughts on that, and or if we need to spell that out, but it's something that I was just thinking about having conversations with Lori, for example.
I'm going to use I statement. I prefer emails because there are times where I'm having verbal conversations and I will sometimes forget things that have been said. And then so somebody will come back to me, and let's just say Bill will be like, hey, Dave, remember that conversation? And I said this piece during the conversation. I'll be like, oh, shoot, Bill, I'm sorry. Whereas an email, yes, it not only does it help public record, but it helps keep track of what's exactly being said. That's just my preference as the co-chair right now. And I think that would probably be the smartest route for anybody. Because, yes, go ahead, Fred.
Oh, I thought there's other hands up. I'll get in line.
Oh, okay. Take a look here. Here. Okay.
I'm actually going to speak on behalf of Joe Hertzberg, who's not here on the working agreements. I'm going to look at an email he sent me and asked me to bring into this space because he couldn't attend. Though on to Zach's point, as a reminder, we do now have a shared document in your shared folder on action items that come up in meetings. So that may be another place for things to be documented. Okay, so Joe, 2 things on the working agreements. One is, and he's recommending, could the group spend a few minutes talking in dialogue to make sure that everyone has the same understanding of the working agreement, honor the decisions of the group? If we differ in our interpretations, it could be confusing or one could violate that. And then the second thing is, he wasn't quite sure what was meant by step up and step back.
Me neither. Thanks.
You had a great explanation for step up and step back that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the explanation was, it was like, when it's your turn to step up and get engaged, be engaged, but then allow somebody, when you're done, be done, allow somebody else to finally get their chance to step up and then let them step back. That way we're being conscious of what we're doing instead of just kind of taking over a meeting and wanting to continue a discussion where we can allow other people to operate within. I have lost my Zoom.
It's Terry, then Fred.
Okay, go ahead, Terry.
Well, perhaps as a demonstration of step up, step back, I will step up here and say that I'm a longtime conscientious objector to working agreements for a variety of reasons, both specific and general. And so if you want to know more about that, you can buy me a whiskey and we can talk about it sometime. But I'm going to step up and say, I'm going to vote no. These are essentially extensions of the bylaws because you can be censored and removed because of violations of these. And I don't think they're particularly specific enough to go in a bylaw. And, so that would be one example of why I don't like them and decline to vote for them. But I will probably generally abide by them. And in that spirit, I'm going to step back and the conversation continue. But one other point, I'm not sure as an alternate, I am, responsible for this anyway. That part isn't clear. Again, I think I'll be a perfectly fine committee member alternate and still vote no on these.
Thank you, Terry. And Fred, you got your hand up now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I can't disagree with Terry about how meaty these could be under certain circumstances, but they all seem most amenable to a good group dynamic, and certainly I can ascribe to every single one of them. But I question about Zach's suggestion was when I raised my hand. Did you want to say that all communication between committee members be by email and not by phone?
I didn't have a preference per se. I was mainly thinking in the very narrow space of suggestions for future conversations in these meetings.
Like
It might be nice to have an email log of that. And therefore, people could provide public comment or feedback on that. But
If I might, because it's a solution rather than going back and adding something that might be more prescriptive and we might have difficulty with. If in the meeting, we discuss maybe what should be on the agenda 1 or 2 meetings down, that we put it on the comment section, which is, I think, open to everyone. It's a permanent record, and the public viewers can see it as well. and just have that kind of discussion where it's memorialized.
That's good. Thank you, Fred. I guess we'll have to continue to discuss that a little bit more than Zach and
Yeah.
go from there. Go ahead, Jose. I see your hand up.
I actually agree with Zach. I know some people rather like talk it out over the phone, but even having that be followed up with an email, these are the things we took away from that. So
Mhm.
someone can say, oh no, you missed this, because I agree with David completely where I can have a long conversation and you go on 20 sidebars and then a week later they ask you about this one piece and you're like, no, I have no idea. So an email is great. I also wanted to comment on the step up, step back. I think part of it also goes really well with the one right before it, wanting to make sure every member who wants to be heard is heard. It's not just about stepping back, but also recognizing how often you're stepping up to allow others a chance to step up. The stepping back, make sure you're kind of reading the room and giving everyone a chance to speak. Because I know that when things get passionate, sometimes you're really passionate, so you end up talking like 8 times and people don't get to it, so.
And we want everybody to have a chance, even the, those who are less apt to speak. We're all here for a reason and we want everybody to be heard. So thank you. That's a great way to put that, Jose. Appreciate you, man.
The rest of it is all complete sentences, and then that's just kind of a fragment with some sort of peculiar capitalization, and I think that's why it's confusing, because it's not a parallel statement
Okay.
or a structure. So, I don't know.
Well, and-
Bother rewording it.
Yeah, I mean, some of us, for us average Joes, step up and step back is the first time we've heard something like that. Like,
It is for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay, does anybody else have any comments or? Okay. Right. So if there are no further edits, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the working agreements.
Moved.
You guys want a more definition, more definitive answer for step up, step back before we approve this, or?
Didn't comment.
From the chat.
Does it say? Let's see the chats.
Rewording.
Her hand's up, so maybe she can speak up.
Oh, go ahead, Destiny.
Thank you, David. Yes, just for some people who haven't heard of that before, maybe just including like in a small bullet point. The way I see is be mindful when you do take space, please step back to allow others to share that space, which Jose was really great to explain, allowing others to share space. And I just added that in the comments in case that it's more clear for people to understand where that comes from or what the active, how you actively participate in that mindset of stepping up, but also stepping back for others as well.
So Destiny, for like a synopsis of what you're saying, we should add a definition of what that is, and then we can go ahead and adopt this working agreement. Does that sound pretty accurate? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and motion to add a definition to step up and step back. Does anybody want to second that for a definition?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. And then with that being said, does anybody want to oppose? Yes, go ahead, Fred.
Honestly, I just don't think it's necessary. I think it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
And we don't have the language in front of us. I'd rather just adopt what we have and work with them, work them.
We do this as a compromise, everybody. We can add the language just so it's there. And what our definition of step up and step back is for this committee. And it will be there in our next meeting and we can adopt this. Does that sound compromisable enough for everyone? Jose, go ahead.
Are we also gonna talk about putting something about it, having things in writing in here? Or you just, because you said we should talk about it more, but it has to be in the working agreement.
I'm talking about the definition of.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I do think we should wait till we have the definition. But
Okay.
also there was an email thing we talked about, wanting to have things in writing.
Right.
That should also be in this working agreement. So we can't really adopt it until we have that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I got you, Jose. So then. Okay, no, that's excellent. So I guess my next question is, wait, before I get moving, Amy, do you have something you want to say?
I'd like to propose a simple fix that might help with this. Destiny made an edit in the chat that, and someone else suggested that, maybe it was Destiny, suggested that number 9 and number 10 really go together. So why don't we combine the two, step up, step back, dash, collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard, something like that. Can we just co-edit this right now? Put it
I think
together.
that's an excellent idea, Amy.
I think we all kind of understand what the spirit is.
Right. I think we're all in agreement, at least on that piece. And we go ahead and do that. If somebody makes a motion for it, we can actually move.
I move to combine 10 and 9, step up, step back, dash, collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. That was an excellent suggestion, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That was excellent. Thank you, Jose, for the motion. We have a second?
Destiny seconded in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it say here?
She's just seconding it.
Yes, okay, perfect. Sorry, guys. All right, so that piece has been ironed out. So the other piece is the form of communication. And so this is my suggestion. If it's just having a conversation, like trying to give a co-chair some input and idea, like, hey, last meeting, you're a little too silly or whatever, and we need you, that kind of thing, that's one thing. But if you have something official, like, hey, next meeting, I would really like if we add this to the agenda. I would say if it's an actual meeting item, then email it. Is that acceptable? So could we go ahead and add that language? Does that work for you, Jose? How about you, Zach? You guys are the.
Yeah, no, I think that is
Yes,
fine.
I mean, anything that has an action item. So essentially, if you want something to be done from this conversation, it should be followed up in writing.
Exactly.
Be in writing.
Yeah, anything that's supposed to be there's supposed to be action taken on something by the committee, email it. That way we have it in writing, it's in public record, and we are able to track it. Like, okay, now the co-chair has something, they have something they need to work on. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and ask for somebody to motion. Anybody? I'll motion it. Will you second that? All right, I guess that works on that piece too. And we'll have that added. Again. Does anybody oppose? No? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Point of order that the chair shouldn't first or second.
I apologize. All right. Does anybody first that motion?
Amended, and I suggest it to be on point 6 to clarify that utilizing co-chairs to note additional topics for discussion should be written in email.
Perfect. Second? Okay. And we have 2 seconds. Okay. So with those 2 new added pieces to our working agreements, is there any further discussion need to be had? Go ahead, Jose.
Motion to adopt working agreements as amended.
Second? Okay. We now have any opposed? I'm gonna get this, guys. I really will. Hey, go ahead, Terry. I see your hand up.
You can't.
I'm just opposed, voting no, stepping back.
Yeah, yes.
Alternates cannot vote.
That is correct.
The bylaws we just adopted.
So Terry, yeah, alternates have a voice, but they have no vote at this point.
Then I'm not bound by these agreements. Is that right? Gotcha. Just saying.
All right, so did we formally have a Destiny? Okay, go ahead, Destiny.
Yes, I just wanted to comment, even I believe, I pose this to the group, that even if alternates or the alternates to alternates follow these working agreements, because we're working to aim this work together, and if they're going to potentially fill a role in the committee further, I think it's best practice in good faith to continue this work. And then it honors the decision that the committee has thus gone forward. And I motion I propose that we discuss that these agreements and these expectations be shared across everyone who is working across this work.
Thank you, Destiny. Okay. Is there anybody else who opposes? That we have working agreements. Let me see that.
I got one second. Destiny's motion.
Anybody want to second Destiny's motion?
I can clarify, so
Go ahead, John.
Destiny, are you proposing that we would add language in the working agreements as like in the prompt, or, as a committee inclusion, and with the inclusion of our alternates and alternates, that we agree to approach this work with Onyx, and that that edit specifically, or something along those lines? Do you have like a suggestion for us to vote on?
I think that these working agreements, thank you, Zach. I think these working agreements, I don't know if it has to be included in there specifically, but I believe that in practice, they should revolve around everyone within this community, this committee, and the alternates, because they are going through the same educational materials. They will be potentially presenting in community with us. We don't want to undermine the consensus and honor, or undermine the consensus decisions in the group. So if it needs to be in the working agreements, then yes, I propose it be in the working agreements, but I think it should just be applicable. Just because people can vote or cannot, that doesn't change the working agreements. This isn't a voting agreement. This is a working agreement in this committee.
Yeah. I guess my going to retract the thought of like changing definition, just going back to the bylaws that we just approved. It is comprised of the members as well as alternates, reserve alternates. So when we say committee, it reflects the entirety of our body inclusion, in the inclusion of those alternates and reserve alternates. So no, I retract the suggestion of a change in definition or adding any additional text.
So we're just gonna pull that back. Yeah. Okay. All right, and I see, Amy, you have your hand up?
My hand was up to say the same thing, so we
Okay.
are all good. Thank you.
Okay, well, this has been a learning experience for me. Is there any other comments, or before I attempt for another time to move forward? No? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm like, I'm seeing that I keep trying to move faster than everybody else, so I just want to make sure. Okay, so then as of now, with everything that we've added, is we are good to move. We have working agreements that everybody's agreed upon, right? Okay. All right, we have voted them in. All right, I'm making sure. Okay, so I believe we can get to the next slide, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our transition project manager, Shoshana.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so nice to be with you again. And David, it was an education for me too. I
Yeah.
appreciate your parliamentary procedures. Thank you so much. Shoshana Oppenheim, Transition Project Manager, she, they pronouns. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our presentation from our team today. So the focus of our conversation is our upcoming milestones in the transition and the proposed role for the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Our hope is that this conversation is responsive to your requests and outlines the specific ways that the committee can support the transition. Next slide, please. So our conversation tonight is going to focus on milestones between now and October. And this slide shows the timeline for the governance area of the transition. So if you did read the transition plan, you know that we separated the work into governance and election methods. And so this slide is just focused on the governance component of the work. So several members of our team are here to provide you a deeper dive into the work of the Salary Commission, the Independent District Commission, the development of our city organization, and progress on council operations under the new form of government. But I want to put these projects in context. The organizational structure is foundational to the governance of our city. Establishing our leadership and organization will lead to code updates and alignment with our new budget functions and making sure that they're all aligned with the charter. It will allow us to develop a recruitment plan for the city administrator and to develop recommendations, salary range, and based on the direct reports that will report up to the city administrator. The budget function review will be conducted between June and September, with initial reports coming out for the recommendations on the 24-25 budget process in early September. The basic goal of the review is that the current budget function looks to improve and align with the outcomes required under the new charter amendments. We'll be considering legal requirements, national best practices, as well as the change in the form of government. Our citywide budget office will be establishing a cross-bureau stakeholder group, including council staff, to discuss and design the budget process throughout the summer. Our budget team is currently working on the best way and timing for engaging with this group, and you'll likely see them at the end of the summer before they finalize their recommendations. All of this work that I've just described and that's represented on this slide will lead to revisions of the city code. Our guiding principles is to include prioritizing what needs to happen to ensure that the new form of government can function in January 1st, 2025. Making sure that the mayor that's elected in 2024 can hire a city administrator who has a manageable organization structure that reports up to them. And that we're able to pass a budget for the 25-26 fiscal year, and that our leadership, including our elected officials, understand their rules and their roles and authority. Next slide, please. This slide shows a timeline for the elections methods area of the transition. You're going to hear from Sofia Alvarez Castro about the milestones and the work of the Independent District Commission. Just to give you a little bit of updates since we last talked about this work, the city has issued a notice of intent to proceed for a contract with United Way of Columbia to develop our voter education program. And at the same time, we're developing an agreement with Multnomah County to establish roles and responsibilities for voter education and develop a collaborative approach to our voter education efforts. You'll also see on this timeline that we are being mindful of the fact that our team will need to manage the ballot measures that were referred to the 2024 election. So that's just there to kind of, have a placeholder that you understand how all of these pieces are fitting together and that there's alignment. Slide, please. So we've identified 6 key milestones between now and October, and the decision maker associated with those milestones and the proposed role of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. First, the Chief Administrative Officer will finalize the transition. The role of this committee is to advise the Chief Administrative Officer on the transition plan. Second, the Salary Commission will set the salaries of the elected officials. The role of this committee is to support the Salary Commission's community engagement efforts. Third, the Chief Administrative Officer will finalize the transition's community engagement plan. The role of this committee is to advise the Chief Administrative Officer on that community engagement plan, how to improve it, how to implement it, how to deliver for Portland voters. Fourth, the Independent District Commission will create 4 new geographic districts. The role of this committee is to support the work of the Independent District Commission's community engagement efforts, which are extensive. We'll hear a lot of detail about them. Fifth, the City Council will revise the code that outlines council operations and procedures. The role of this committee is to advise the City Council and support our community engagement efforts around this area. Six, City Council will approve the new organizational structure. The role of this committee is to support the community engagement and education about how the public can engage with their new form of government. We have a slide for each of these milestones that includes key dates and more details on the proposal. So if you have any questions, I'm going to ask that you wait until we get to those slides for those folks. So next slide. Take those. So the first milestone.
I'm sorry.
of the-
We take Destiny's question.
Oh,
I think
of course.
it's
Yeah.
not about.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Go ahead, Destiny.
Thank you, David. Yes, I just wanted to bring it up to the committee and also to the, obviously the community who's hearing that there is a conflict of interest with me. My employer is United Way of the Columbia Willamette. This is the first time I've heard of any conversations they're having with the city of Portland. But I will just always excuse myself from any voting or any matters of moving forward in that work because of that conflict of interest. And I will bring it up anytime my employer is brought up.
Thank you so much, Destiny. So the first milestone is for the Chief Administrative Officer to finalize the transition plan. The role of this committee is to advise the Chief Administrative Officer about this plan. Transition plan is a foundational document that outlines the key deliverables for the project across all of the streams of work. The draft plan was distributed to this committee on Friday, and we ask that you submit any comments if something is missing from the plan, if something doesn't read well to you, if you have any questions, to the co-chairs and Julia by Sunday, June 11th. Staff will then forward the comments to the transition team and we'll incorporate as appropriate. We're specifically looking for your proposed edits to the plan rather than questions that arise for you. The transition team will present the transition plan at a council work session on June 29th from 2 to 5 p.m. After we hear from council, we'll finalize the plan and publish it for on our website. We've also invited the co-chairs to participate in the council work session, and that we hope that all the community members will watch. So now I'll hand it over to Jamie Hamill from our team. I'm sorry, am I pointing it to Beck? I'm passing it to, passing it to you on the salary.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, Jamie Duhamel. It's really good to see you all again. So as Shoshana explained, the second milestone is for the Salary Commission to set the salaries of elected officials. Fun. The role of this committee is to support the Salary Commission's community engagement. So I'm really happy to add additional context to this timeline that you see on your slide. At their last meeting, the Salary Commission settled on their guiding principles and their criteria, which together compose the methodology that they're using to create a salary proposal. This criteria actually led them to identifying a floor salary of about $142,000 for the 12 city councilors. And the floor rates for the mayor and auditor are subject to change, but based on some additional analysis they're going to receive at their next meeting. But right now they're sitting at around $177,000 for the mayor and $161,000 for the auditor. If you are interested in kind of learning more about how they came to those numbers, all of those meetings are published and available for you to view, as are all the materials. So their next meeting on June 13th is when they'll make some final decisions about their proposal before they launch it out for public comment. They plan to turn their June 27th meeting into a listening session about their proposal. And their engagement plan also includes a survey that will be ready for prime time by the 15th and will stay open until July 16th, not the 10th that's on this slide. And that's because that was a decision made very recently, because the other part of their engagement plan that was recently decided is that they are going to have a table at many of the district commission listening sessions in July. And their last listening session will be on the 16th, and you're going to hear more about that in a couple minutes. So all of this info will be analyzed and discussed at their July 20th meeting. It is entirely possible that they may be ready to vote on the 20th. And in fact, we're hoping for it. But just in case they are not, the meeting on the 24th of July will be their last opportunity to meet that August 1st deadline as mandated in charter. So obviously the Salary Commission is an independent body and in charge of their engagement strategy, but they would love GTAC's assistance with sharing the survey, filling out the survey, and getting people to show up to the listening session. I don't know what happened to the presentation, but are there any questions that I can answer?
Amy, I saw that your hand was up.
Yeah, maybe this is back one slide, but I wanted to know more about the decision to go with, I think you said United Way for the voter education. Maybe this is like too deep a dive question, but it's interesting. It's not an organization I traditionally associate with voter outreach or anything to do with the electoral system.
Panel, what I understand is that the response to the RFP was a coalition response, including national leaders on implementation of voter education. We'll be happy to share more information after the compliance step of the work is done to include all of the various partners. So the RFP is moving through a process. There was a notice of intent to proceed. That was followed by a protest period. That protest period closes. Now we're in the compliance component. And then when we move to contract. Happy to give you more information. There are folks around the table that have a lot more detail about the review process. We don't really disclose a lot about the review process, but what I understand is that there's a coalition of partners, including nationally recognized organizations that implement Ranchers.
I would love just any kind of materials or follow-up about that coalition and organization.
There'll be more available once we get into the contract process.
Thanks.
Okay, Terry?
On the Salary Commission, you know, our role is going to be to support their engagement strategy, right? That's what I understood. Does their engagement strategy go beyond their existence? Like they're done and they vanish off the face of the org chart as of August 22nd or something, or actually probably even sooner. So are they developing a plan that we then implement past that point into the fall or into the future? Or is that we done then too?
That has not been discussed, but I think that's a really interesting question for this body to take up, because what the Salary Commission will be ending with in August is a recommendations report. There are a number of probably unanswered questions they're going to have and a number of things they would like future salary commissions to consider. And I believe they would probably like support in kind of helping the community understand how they arrived at those numbers. We have not talked specifically about an engagement strategy after August, but that would be a great conversation to have with you all. But their authority does end by August 30th. So after that, it's anybody can pick up, I assume.
William?
Thank you, David. You know, I'm a reserve alternate, so I respect that I can have a distant voice but not vote. Jamie, I think I heard you say that the draft transition plan was distributed last Friday. Did that go to the alternates and reserve alternates as well?
Yeah, if the email went from Julia to the reserve alternates and alternate.
I'll be sure and check. I apologize that I apparently missed that, but I can get on it now.
Thank you, William. Amy, I saw you also added something in the chat as well, so I'm going to call on you.
Thank you. No need to repeat what I put in the chat, but I do have a little bit of a clarifying question regarding our role with supporting the Salary Commission with community engagement. I see our role here on the right side that I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, that we personally complete the community survey, we attend a listening session. I want to know if that's in person or virtual, or if we should be attending in person or virtually. And then in terms of encouraging others to complete the survey and attend the listening session, we can all do that. But our impact here feels pretty minimal. I just want to make sure, is there anything I'm missing here about the depth of our ability to support this? I feel like it doesn't seem like there's a huge lift here, and I don't want to be missing that if there is more to this.
Everything you outlined is absolutely correct. There isn't much more to that. We have a pretty deep comms plan and engagement plan. And so yes, everything you listed is exactly what we're looking for to support. The meeting will be hybrid, so you are welcome to show up in person or online, whatever you choose. It will be in this room likely. They're converting one of their regular Salary Commission meetings into their listening session. So we're going to hold it in a typical fashion.
Could I just say for everybody, I've had, I was doing a practice run, if you will, with some community engagement. And the more we know and understand, the easier it'll be for us, because people want to know things like with the salary. And even though we are not a part of that, we can still have knowledge to speak into that piece. I've had questions about things. I was at a meeting and a lot of it was about the districting. So, I had to know a little bit about that. So what I'm saying is, even though we might not have a lot of heavy lifting in certain areas, it is good for us to have knowledge in those things. Because when we engage in community, they're not going to think, oh, these guys only have to do this piece. They're going to want to know, oh, this is somebody we can actually talk to who has hands-on with what's going on at city government right now. So I can ask them this thing. And Amy?
Yeah, I was just writing this in the chat. I just would want to add in a request for some collateral or public facing materials that we could use for that outreach to be provided to us.
We are developing collateral. We're developing an FAQ. We'll have a report. Obviously the survey, there will be a number of materials ready to go probably by the end of next week. So we can certainly make sure.
For the public, right? Yeah.
If I go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the role of TTAC, and this may go to what Amy was saying earlier. It looks like these are all individual committee members' responsibilities, that we would each take the community survey when it comes online, rather than the committee completing the survey and attending the listening session, et cetera. So that's a clarification. I'd like to go back to voter education, because it's not clear to me reading the transition plan and not knowing what the contract is with United Way or Multnomah County, that having been a state elections official and a county elections official, it's so important to educate candidates as well as when their filing deadline is, especially now that the public financing system is being changed, what their responsibilities are as far as having a treasurer and registering and campaign finance reporting, all of that. I mean, I've trained hundreds of candidates and their treasurers and their campaign managers on that. And it seems like that's because of the momentous size of the transition change. And the number of people we hope will be interested in serving on the new council and being a candidate in one of these 4 districts, that sooner than later, they have some sense of, because the donation period starts now, I think, or as soon as the ordinance is adopted, that the commission's the Public Finance Commission is recommending to the council, that then the donation limits kick in, because the election cycle starts for a year from November 2024. And so I think it's just important to get it out front so that nobody gets caught making mistakes unwittingly, and I'm just raising that now.
We couldn't agree with you more, and that's why candidate education is a really important part of our work. Currently, that work sits in the auditor's office. They run a candidate education program, and we know that candidates speak with educating the candidates has a multiplier effect, because they interact with so many voters. So they're able to share information about ranked choice voting, about which districts people are living in. Absolutely. So that's a high priority for our work. And maybe it makes sense for us to share the draft of the RFP that was published, so you can know at least what we were looking for in those pieces of the voter education. Jamie, are we ready to move over to the next? I think we're moving to Julia.
Oh, yeah, I get one. The third milestone that we're going to talk about halfway through here is the Chief Administrative Officer, Mike Jordan, is responsible for finalizing a transition-wide community engagement plan. The role of this committee is very important. It's to advise Mike on what that plan should be. So that's why we have this time-limited community engagement work group that's been meeting to bring a plan to you all for your consideration. That work group is open to all of you. So if you haven't attended, it does not mean that you cannot. The work group meets tomorrow night, actually. And then the work group will distribute a draft engagement plan to all of you on June 13th for your review, 1 week before our June 20th meeting. The work group will give a presentation and engage you in a discussion at the June 20th meeting. The work group will meet after that meeting to kind of deliberate based on what they've heard from all of you, consider revising the draft engagement plan, and then coming back to you at the July 10th meeting with the knowledge that we've maybe learned at the June 29th council work session, if there's any revisions at that point related to the engagement plan. And then I think the earliest for this committee would be that July 10th meeting. And you don't have to get there at this meeting, but if you do, you could say, yeah, this is our best thinking around what the engagement plan looks like for the transition. And we want to recommend it to Mike for his consideration. It's possible, maybe depending on, his consideration, he might want to come back to you and talk to you about aspects. We just don't know until we know what it looks like. But the hope would be that, we have the formalized plan. It's on the website. It's available for people in early August. So maybe unlike some of the last slide, I think the role of this committee, I hope is clear. It's really to do the drafting of that plan, but ultimately it is the chief administrative officer for the city who's responsible for adopting the plan. And I'll do a shout out to the community engagement work group for being fantastic. So thank you. It seems like we are taking questions and comments along the way, so maybe I'll pause to see if anyone,
I've been following and I don't see anything right now.
no? Okay, then I am turning it over to, yeah.
Go ahead. Just, there's a lot of watch or attend work sessions and meetings that are not part of our normal meetings. Will we be getting information on those specifically as they come up, or do we have to go find them and make sure we attend? And if I can request that we actually just get an email telling us where they are.
Yeah, you could get an email, though I will say, all public meetings are recorded and the recordings are posted online. So for most council sessions, for example, happen during the day. Many of you have day jobs that maybe you can't leave your job and go watch a 3-hour meeting. So I also just want to be clear about when there's options for people, like versus you're going to be engaging in dialogue versus, hey, at some point, can you try to watch this recording if you can't come in person?
We'll make sure that you have the information about when the meeting is being held and where to find the recording afterwards.
Sorry, follow up. And says co-chairs participate, to what extent does GTAC actually participate in those meetings? Is it just like, are they giving information, or is it just being there just in case? I don't know what the role is.
So the CIO would really appreciate having the co-chairs by our side for a presentation of the transition plan. During that conversation, I think that you can, the co-chairs can present about the progress that you've made so far,
Right.
your own personal work plan, but also to field questions from the council members if something seems right or off, or are we on track? But we'll coordinate with you around our presentation. And so I'll work with the co-chairs to make sure that they both a substantive and respectful role.
The way I understand it is exactly how you're saying it, Shoshana, and I will let you guys know that Laura and I are both prepared to start, maybe not every meeting together, but between the both of us right now, at least in this beginning phases of GTAC, that we are going to be attending these meetings as we figure out what we're doing, how we're doing it, the foundations, what we're building on. And then as the next phase comes along, and we elect new co-chairs or we continue with the co-chairs we have. I don't know what's happened that yet, but hint, that, but between us, and I'm pretty confident in saying, even with the committee members, that we will be able to, at least somebody will be able to attend all these meetings. Maybe not consistently, and maybe it won't be me consistently. Maybe it might not be Laura, but between all of us, we should be able to get these meetings covered.
Just to add on that, like, you all were appointed by the city council. So I would like them to see you doing the work that they've asked you to do. And I think it's really important for the project. And it's important for city council to have a relationship with the GTAC.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen through some of these work session opportunities.
Go ahead. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I missed you. Who was going first?
I'm next.
Amy. Okay, Amy, go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I just wanted to say that for the part of the community engagement work group, there was an effort to enumerate the lists of organizations that people on the committee have existing relationships with. So we make sure we capitalize on that. So I don't know when that's gonna come to the broader committee, but I wanted to just flag for folks that we're currently making that effort. And so if
Yes.
there's community, like established relationships that you want to make us aware of, we would really like to hear that, and like get them to us, kind of enumerated out, and we'll hold them in.
The spreadsheet will go
Yeah,
out to you
spreadsheet, yeah.
on June 13th when you get the draft and engagement plan with a request to fill out those connections.
All right, and Destiny?
Thank you. Yes, I was thinking, I missed the first engagement meeting, but thank you, Julia, for sending the recordings and all the post work. It's very engaged and clear, and people there have a really great sense of direction where we're going. I also wanted to take this moment now, after considering Fred's last comments, that while we're thinking about community engagement, also since we're going to be out in community, kind of connecting back to candidate education, or working to, use those avenues to be the best informed with the different work that the city is doing. And so I think this is another great place to start thinking about that in our tomorrow's meetings, to reflect on Fred's comments that I think were very valuable and a great pathway of more engagement as well.
Thank you, Destiny. All right, Fred.
Thank you, Destiny. I just wanted, I apologize for having some hearing impairment. But because we're not amplified in the room, Shoshana, I'm having a hard time. I sat here so I could hear the speaker, and then I wanted to come sit
I'm
right
so
next to
sorry.
you, but
So
it's a-
sorry. I'll do better if there's is there anything you'd like?
I don't know. I'm not so sure, but I'm comfortable with proceeding with. Long as,
I'll,
thank you.
I apologize.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it to Sophia on districting.
Thank you, Julia. Hi, everyone. Sophia Alvarez Castro, she, her pronouns, Inclusive Democracy Project Manager, managing the work of the Independent District Commission. So I'll be speaking on the fourth milestone, which is for the Independent District Commission to adopt our 4 new geographic districts. The role for the GTAC is to support the community engagement efforts of the commission. And as you can see on our screen, we have a lot of meetings and public engagement coming up. So last week, the Independent District Commission released its first draft of their district plan with 3 map options for public comment and community input. And so the official public comment began last week. As you can see, we have 8 public hearings in the month of July, 2 public hearings in each of the 4 proposed districts. The public comment period for this will end July 22nd. So we have about a month and almost 2 months for public testimony and engagement around the draft district plan. After our public hearings ends and the public comment period closes, the commission will reconvene in early August and begin deliberating on the input received and adjust the maps if they wish to. And then the earliest that the commission can vote is at the August 16th meeting, and the latest is at the August 21st. So the commission can't vote until 1 month after the last public hearing, which is on July 16th. And so for our public hearings, we're still kind of figuring out some of those final details like locations. So if any of you have any great ideas around community centers or community centrally located locations where we could host the public hearings, I'd love to hear your ideas. But we have various outreach materials that we've created. We have 1-pagers, fact sheets, targeted ads, and a bunch of other just kind of promotional materials that if you could help us disseminate out in community to help bring folks to our public hearings.
Sophia, can I just check, Fred, are you able to clear?
Just a quickly.
I might be going too fast.
Yeah, the fast, yeah, thanks.
I see you leaning in.
Yeah, so what I was saying is we have a bunch of just general outreach materials that we've created. We're translating some of them, and we've created a Google Drive that we're sharing with everyone on our commission and for the public too, to help us spread the word about our hearings. So I'll be sharing those with Julia and she can share them with you all. But if you have time and would like to, the IDC would definitely welcome more support in the actual public hearings. As you can see, there's 8 of them. Some of them are back to back. They're all hybrid, so you can join virtually if you'd like, or you can join in person. You can join in just to kind of listen, or if you were willing to, actually helping us staff these hearings, whether that's welcoming folks, maybe helping be a moderator or facilitator. So there's a bunch of kind of a menu of options for you to engage with the IDC. But yeah, I think that's about it. I'll take any questions.
So the times of these and so forth, are they online? I'm not on the.
Yeah, so
website right
actually,
now.
yeah, I could have added that. So yes, the times are online. So there's this schedule that you see on the screen. There's some weekday options. So those are going to be 6 to 8 p.m. And then there's some weekend options. I'm blinking on the Saturday one, but I think it's like 10 to 12. And then the Sundays 1 to 3. And I'll put the link here in the chat to our website where we have all the information.
Thank you.
I see Leah, want to speak up?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sophia, for the presentation here. My question's really simple, which is just, I am interested in volunteering for some of these. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Julia? Yeah, maybe connecting with Julia, and then we can connect offline.
If I may, just real brief. So with all of the requests maybe that have been made tonight or opportunities for your engagement and leadership, we will be creating a sign-up sheet, a shared document after this meeting. We wanted to make sure we talk through it all, you understand what all of these asks are, you understand what days and times, and we'll just keep a document and ask you to sign up for what you can and what you want to.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Becky, load.
Yeah, I had the same question about how can we communicate with you, but I brought up at the last meeting, and I don't know that it got back to you, that someone had tried to fill out the district survey. It said public comment, but it ended up being a Survey Monkey. And it wasn't clear that there was a way to see if there were what you had written. You couldn't edit what you'd written before you hit return and send it off. And so it's a little awkward for that person. And then, so my follow-up question to that is there a record of all the public comment that anyone that fills out a Survey Monkey can see through some other link?
Yeah, I think I remember that. I think it was an editing, formatting of like the actual Survey Monkey. So we did fix that. But yes, all of our public comments are posted just like for the GTAC on our website. So we've been getting actually quite a bit since we just released the district plan. So we're going to be continuing posting those on our website. We can share those with you too if you're interested.
Hey, Jose.
Well, first off, excellent work. And I think most of East Portland is very happy with that. So secondly, I've gotten a few requests, including my own neighborhood association, for presentations to those groups. Is there an email address or a contact place where we could point those people to?
Yeah.
Because Arlene is gonna not want me to just email her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is just for anyone. So, and folks listening in too, if anyone wants like kind of an educational presentation or a briefing, just to email districtcommission@portlandoregon.gov or email me directly, and then we can coordinate those on behalf of the commission.
Thank you.
I do not see anybody else's hands raised, so I guess we can continue.
All right. Thank you, Sophia. All right, I'm gonna try to project. Go ahead, please, Zoe. I regret drinking this vitamin water. I haven't had one in years, and I feel like my mouth is like coated in weirdness, so I apologize. The fifth milestone that we're going to talk about is for City Council to revise Code 3.02, and that is on council organization and procedure. The role of this committee is to advise council and support community engagement in this work. Code 3.02 outlines council procedures, including when and how meetings occur,
how council actions are adopted, and rules guiding public testimony. A review and update of Code 3.02 is required to be compliant with the revised charter and provide clarity to interested candidates, city staff, and the community on how the 12-member council will initially operate under the new mayor council form of government 2025. Next week, we will share an overview of initial policy choices and recommendations to match the code with the revised charter and facilitate initial operations of the 2025 council. These are focused and limited. We will also share policy topics and initial recommendations for the January 2025 council to consider in their ongoing operations, which will not be a part of this year's update 3.02. We are leaving these policy choices out of this update because they require additional research, time for community engagement, and our policy choices for the 2025 council to decide on. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts. When I said you'll receive this information next week, it will be by email. You'll receive some written materials, and then Diana and I will be back on June 20th. And we really look forward to hearing your thoughts at that meeting, including planning for an August community listening session to share the proposed code updates with the community and then to gather input to inform the 2025 recommendations. For GTAC and broader community, your input is going to be extremely valuable to advise the current council on Code 3.02 revisions this year and then the future council on ongoing operations. So that's all I have. Open it up to questions.
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, just thank you. Obviously very important, especially for the January 2025 council, the new council. But it sounds like the current council will adopt this code 3.02 amendment or change to this fall.
Initial ones, yeah.
But it won't be effective until January 2025, or is it some other provisions that they are going to apply to themselves and their procedures?
No, it's specifically for the January 2025.
Okay. and
So that they can have that first meeting, have rules in
All right.
place for that first meeting.
So the idea of doing it so soon, like a year and 18 months in advance, is simply so that candidates and prospective counselors or administrators have an idea of how they will embark on that first council meeting.
Exactly. And it will help inform things like facilities planning. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Oh, Terry, go ahead, Terry.
Do you have at this point an outline of topic areas or I don't know, a starting point of where you're headed that we can review early?
That's what we'll be sending next week in advance of the June 20th meeting.
Go ahead, Bill.
This very last discussion kind of prompted me to want to talk a little bit about email I sent to you and Julia today in response to the transition plan. And after I read that again, I realized kind of what I felt kind of a little lost or useless so far. And I think it's because so much of this has been focused on process for the next 18 months. And I keep thinking about January 2025 and what that's going to be like. And I sent a number of ideas in this for things that I think we, or at least staff, should be focused on. I don't want to say to the exclusion of anything we're doing here, which is all very important. But I keep thinking about, we're all talking about citizen participation. I wonder what citizens are going to be thinking January 2025. And it's everything from what's going to be up on the agenda and how they're going to comment or not, how citizen complaints are going to be handled if you're electing a city council that's designed to do policy and yet a lot of their times is in reaction to citizen stuff. Do you still want them to do that, or how is that going to be handled? Which really gets into a much more detailed discussion, I think, of the role of the mayor, the role of the city manager, the role of council people. And I know that all that could change when the new are elected, but I think to the extent that we can give a really specific roadmap for them on a lot of those issues to react to, or at least a way to start off on, I think we'll all be better off, because I could see them coming in and there being huge role confusion. Mayor versus city manager, what are they going to do? And I think there's a lot of good models out there between mayors and city managers in other cities that hopefully people are looking at. I haven't heard anything about them, about what works, what isn't, that's going to make this city manager position something really attractive that people are going to want to apply for. I think that's absolutely crucial. There are other things. I was happy to hear we were going to talk about the whole budgeting process, because if you're going to have a city council that's going to be devoted to policy, you're going to have to take a very different approach to the kind of information you give them in a budget process. The current city budget process does not encourage that, discourages it, really limits the kind of input from city employees, really limits the kind of input from citizens, because it's not structured in a way that people can understand and see trade-offs. I've done a lot of work in this area in budgeting, and these are the kinds of things I got on this group for. And I know other people have other strengths, which I'm really happy they have and are using, but I don't see much of an opportunity yet. And maybe it's just I'm impatient. I'm trying to be quiet in these discussions because this is not what's moving me. But those issues are going to move me and are absolutely crucial for January 2025. It's even down to starting the recruitment of the city manager earlier than you are. I'd love to see November election that you've got it down to 5 or 6 really good candidates, so that potentially you could have a city manager starting in January. You know, there are lots of discussion things here, but the kinds of things we're talking about now are so process oriented that I feel like we're not going to get to a lot of really important stuff. And that's the kind of thing I shared with them. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I hope it gets to Mike. I'll pick Mike on it. I don't know how it might change the transition plan, but I think it's one of emphasis, at least, to try to balance out this process over the next 18 months with that January 2025 date and what we have in place for that. So
I will tell you this before anyone else answers, Bill, that we take your emails very seriously. We've had multiple discussions on them, so please don't think you're not being heard.
okay, it's fine. I just don't see it in
You're not seeing it yet. Yeah, I understand that.
now or what's coming. So yeah.
I'm happy to respond. Bill, I saw your email today and I discussed it with Mike. So many of the things that you're concerned about, maybe we should highlight that for roles and responsibilities of all of the different positions, we're absolutely going to be developing a very rigorous onboarding process. Our hope is to have those onboarding materials prepared early in advance of the election, so that people who are curious about the position will know what their roles and responsibilities will be in terms of if they're planning on running for city councilor or another position at the city. In terms of the role of the city administrator, much of that information is pretty detailed in the roles and responsibilities for city administrator and mayor, very detailed in the charter. And so we can bring that information forward, and so that you have that information, and then that information will of course be into the onboarding process. So folks are very clear about roles and responsibilities. We're actually launching a series of conversations at the city over the next couple of weeks, starting with this week on Thursday. We'll be having a briefing from city administrators and managers, first time city administrators, or actually cities that just moved to a city administrator or just moved to a city manager, so we can learn from their lessons of success and the challenges that they face. So we'll be having that. Am I doing better, Bill?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we'll be learning from their successes and what it actually takes to recruit a city administrator. And then just on your point about your question about recruitment and the timeline, the charter is pretty clear about who has responsibility to appoint.
To a royal on the move, Prince Harry, who's travels from Montecito, California to.
Oops.
I'm not sure what that means, but so it's very clear about who has the authority to appoint the city administrator and how the city administrator is confirmed. So we will be doing as much work in advance to make sure that there's position description, a salary range, so that we have an idea about additional talents and skills that are needed actually to recruit the city administrator for Portland's first city administrator, so that we're ready to go at the close of the election when it is known who our leadership is. It seems a little presumptuous for us to launch a recruitment before we know who's sitting in that chair, because they may have additional skills and talents that they're interested in, and in order to lead this city. So that's our plan. If we hear differently over the course of the process, of course, we'll be reaching out to candidates that are actually running for those offices. So we'll have their feedback as well to incorporate. We're anxious, as you are, to see who's sitting in that seat, but we know the lines of authority outlined in the charter kind of prescribe how we should tackle this challenge. But I'll be following more detail in email. Yeah, of course.
Add something to that. Okay, I'm gonna call in Jane and go ahead, Jane.
Thank you, David, and
Yes.
thank you, Shoshana. We received a wheelbarrow load of material from Julia in that shared file. And my blood pressure went down like 5 notches when I took a look at it, because in that there are 2 phenomenal documents and presentations regarding what cities did we look at when we were looking to change our form of government, and what did we learn from them? And obviously there's been a whole slew load of work done internally by a tremendous team within the city of talking to people who have gone through the angst and the agony of all of this, and what they did and how they did it and what they discovered and what would they do differently if they would have to do it again. So that made me, and I'm constantly reminded when I come to these meetings or when Julia sends stuff, how much work is going on at the city with different departments and how much stuff is getting done. And again, we sit here and it comes to us, and it comes to us in pieces. And the more we ask, the more I think stuff should get dumped in that wheelbarrow that Julia sent, because it's really fascinating and interesting stuff. So what I took away from it when my blood pressure came down before I came into this meeting, because I've been reading for like a few hours, was that I personally have to be extremely patient and wait for the information and the material. And then when it comes, and if I've done enough reading ahead of time to be able to be relatively informed and somewhat smart, to be able to make viable comments. So I understand the frustration on the team, because we're worried. We're all personally worried as citizens, and we're even more worried because we feel that we've got this responsibility on our shoulders to be able to present it to the community and represent it. But I think that the timelines that the city teams are giving us are really good. And I think the city teams are really good at listening and hearing to us. So I guess it's just a sort of a cautionary, it's going to be okay. And I'll take my hand down now. Thank you so much.
Jane, can you go ahead and call on Destiny?
Thank you. I think, yes, the flyers and the folders were great. I think I agree with Bill and the sentiments that he has, whether or that we haven't had the time to talk about how are we going to, and Zach brought this up in some of our community engagement forums of some of the things that we should be focusing on is service delivery, right? Because if we look at those complaints, a lot of people are saying, this is a lot of great work the city's doing, but I'm concerned about my, neighborhood. I'm concerned for my businesses. I'm concerned for my schools, service delivery things. And while we don't know who the procedures will be or who the administrators are, I think it would be great when we're engaging community to say, we've read those complaints and those feedbacks that you have brought up. And while we don't know what this new government's going to look like, and we internally know who's going to be the administrator and all those things are, I think Zach and what I agreed with was we also need to be engaging people, the citizens, the residents, that this is what you should kind of expect on that, in January 2025. Like, this is the person and these are the roles. Like, it's a new government. And I think there's a lot of information, like Jane just said, of things we wish we would have known, things that we would love to have done, and that can be internal, but why have that information siloed? Why not continue to take that feedback and then, follow through that communication loop of saying, like, as we know more about the rules, the clarities, and we're creating these engagement materials, really address the service delivery and the concerns people have of just a functioning city, right? And I think that's one role that we could help on, and that's something that we have brought up internally in our community engagement group. And I think we will continue those conversations tomorrow.
Julia, you had your hand up?
I did.
Yeah.
I just don't have a virtual hand tonight.
Right, yeah.
Fix that. So the reason I got on this committee is similar to what Bill was saying. More kind of substantive and less about the logistics, and my concerns are about the culture shift that's coming up. And I apologize, I read all the attachments and watched the videos, but I haven't gotten through the shared folders. And maybe this will assuage some of my concerns, but I'm one concern, there's going to be a lot of turnover at the city throughout or due to this change, and that gets expensive, and that will leave a bad taste in the public's mouth. The other is that we are going to go through a lot of expense to find and hire the city administrator, and he or she or they need to come into a culture that
We lost the volume in the room.
The internet went out in the room. If you can hear me.
It's muted.
Again, I have to press mine was red. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Go ahead, Juanita. Mute. Where did you get this?
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to follow up on the comments regarding the contents of the chair folder. I think again, I agree, it's incredible, good information, but in reading all of those documents, especially the contract with the next strategies, there is some tasks that are going to be some of the deliverables that I want to know, are we going as the GAT committee, are we going to be receiving some of the results of those assessments? I would be very interested in getting learning about the result of the programmatic assessment and the result of the analysis of management systems and structures, because that will help us in comparing also the information that was submitted on the organizational structures of other cities, as well as their lessons learned, for us to be able to give better recommendations to the city.
Thank you for your input.
I didn't hear an answer if we're going to be receiving that information.
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. Is it the information that we've used thus far from our other cities that you're interested in? Or do you want a presentation specifically on forms of government? I'm sorry.
No. I was commenting that in reading the contract with Next Strategies and learning about all the deliverables that they're going to be doing, especially in the organizational development consulting part of it. I want to know if the GAT is going to be receiving the results of the programmatic assessment and the results of the analysis of management systems and structures, the way it is now, and what are the changes are, because that will help us to comparing also that piece of information or what is actually happening in Portland and within the city structure and the systems in place, and using also the information provided on the other cities, organizational structures, as well as their lessons learned, will help us to make better recommendations to the transition team.
Absolutely. And luckily, our next presenter, Becky, will be able to address that. So it looks like you have one more question, and then we can transition to Becky and she can present on that.
Thank you.
That's good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
So Becky, are you there in the multiverse?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
No. You got to speak up.
Little tiny voice.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You're muted. You muted yourself.
Okay, how's that?
There we go. Thank you, Becky.
Hold on. I'm gonna leave the meeting from one place. Hold on a sec. Okay, sorry, everyone. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
She can't hear us.
Now I can hear you. Sorry, I'm so sorry. My computer's not working, so I'm on the phone, propped on some books, looking at my screen. Okay, now you can hear me and see me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to talk for a minute, and then I'm going to pass it to Jamie Duhamel from our team. I know that we are running short on time, so I will try to be brief. I met y'all a couple weeks ago. I'm Becky Tilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Transition Service Delivery Manager. I think we're on milestone 6, which is for City Council to approve a new high-level organizational structure reporting to the city administrator. Briefly, you'll see last time it was referred to as service delivery. I mentioned we were in the middle of rebranding. We have rebranded. We're calling ourselves City Organization. As you can see on the header here, the Future Improvements Project is going to come next. A lot of what y'all were talking about with regard to improving service delivery is going to come in that future improvements part, which is post-October. We can talk a ton more about that. You'll see we've got a couple of more GTAC meetings scheduled on the calendar. I want to talk about the timeline just briefly. You'll see that this version that you're looking at on the screen is different than the one that you got in your packet. It is evolving in real time. The kind of the big key milestones remain the same, but I want to talk about a couple of differences. So first, the same stuff. We just concluded the first of 3 phases of discussion about the future structure. We're starting in on the next phase, on phase 2 now. And then our upcoming meetings with you in July and September, it looks like, remain the same. And then our work session with council remains the same. And then Mike, the CAO, still is going to provide a recommendation to council for their consideration this fall. You mentioned supporting employees, employee culture. That's going to be a big focus of our work after the decisions are made, making sure that we have robust change management presence. It'll also, this fall decision will also allow for us to have some technical implementation before the changes go into effect in the new fiscal year. But really, phases 2 and 3 of the assessments are being informed by how phase 1 went. So we are evolving our plans in real time. And because the recommendations that come out of phase 1, 2, and 3 of this process are going to be informed by employee feedback and by community feedback, it's important for us to continue to iterate our community engagement plans, as well as the project. Sorry, I got a chat. Yes, I will. I'm going to pass it to Jamie in a second, but before I do, Juanita, so I might need to talk with our project sponsor about sharing the programmatic assessments. What they are really is kind of status reports on the conversations that have been happening on the internal team. So it's a great question, and I think I need to circle back with you on that if that's okay. I can't see you because I can't see anything on my screen, but I will defer to David.
Yeah, I mean, I just unmute myself. I say thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Juanita.
Great to hear. Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate the question and the interest. And I think as we think about the role of GTAC in this particular body of work, as you'll see those bullet points, and I'll pass it to Jamie again, like I said in a second, it's largely intended to be focused around engagement. So engagement planning, engagement with employees and with community, and then helping to facilitate some of those sessions. So that's really our proposed role of GTAC in this particular context. But I just wanted to speak to kind of the evolving plan, just to tee up Jamie as she talks about our evolving engagement planning. So I'll pass it to you, Jamie, and I apologize again for the technical difficulties.
Thanks, Becky. Hi again, everyone. The last time I came and talked to you about this bucket of work, we talked about employee engagement. That work obviously continues, but tonight we're going to focus on the timeline for community engagement. The good news is that we are right now in planning conversations with a few folks in this room about how to best do this. So you are front and center in this committee, and so you're going to get more information very soon as it evolves. So tonight we don't really have super specific details to share because, like Becky said, our plans are literally evolving as the project evolves, and details are like emerging in real time. And I mean literally like as of 12, 3, and 5 p.m. today, which is why we keep changing the slides. Regardless, the goal remains ensuring that we can engage with community in a way that is meaningfully informs the process, that is at the right time and in the right way, such as screening questions or outcomes that can directly support the development of the recommendation. And the first step that I am working on is a review of thousands of pieces of feedback for the past several years that we've received from a variety of sources about all the different ways the community would like to see the city improved. I'm really glad to hear Destiny bring this up because that is exactly the approach that we're taking here. These sources of public input represent a diverse set of hundreds, potentially thousands, because I'm not done counting them yet, of Portlanders from a wide variety of incomes and neighborhoods and cultural backgrounds. And so what we want to do is go back out into community with this summarized outcomes that have been identified by community and have conversations that can inform the organizational structure recommendations that are going to emerge this fall. So for now, we are hoping to have an informational session in June hosted by GTAC, and then design another session with you later in the summer that will further inform the process of choosing a city organizational structure as that process continues to evolve. And then we're going to continue to look to GTAC for partnership and how we design engagement opportunities for the future improvements phase, which will kick off after October and will actually include a much wider range of opportunities for improvements to service delivery to Portlanders beyond the new org structure process. And of course, as listed here, volunteering at the event or the events moving forward and encouraging others to attend is great. I know we're at time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but.
I was just gonna ask if anybody has any more questions due to time, that they just add them into the chat. And so we can get them recorded and logged in, and we can go ahead and move on. Okay, so next steps. Well, the recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website. Staff will circulate a volunteer sign-up sheet based on tonight's roles. The community engagement work group meets tomorrow from 6 to 7:30. And our next committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 20th, 6 to 8 p.m.
It's a virtual sign-up sheet.
Correct.
And at our next meeting, we have two primary agendas. We will have our presentation by the Community Engagement Work Group, followed by discussion and a presentation and discussion about Code 3.02, the council organization and procedure. All scheduled meetings are published on the committee's webpage. And that is meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating, David. Good job.
I never.
That was the volume?
You're doing great. It's
Oh,
like,
that's-
it's a
there's
group
no
effort.
crew
It's a
limit.